Welcome back to another genre analysis where I take some of the top genres in the marketplace today and do a deep dive on them based on an in-depth blend of human and AI analysis of actual bestsellers to break them down scene by scene to know exactly what tropes it has, what character archetypes and world building elements that it has, and even a scene by scene plot template built from essentially kit bashing the core elements of what these bestsellers are all doing together into one template. Today we're covering epic fantasy, specifically kind of your standard epic fantasy. There are a bunch of sub-genres within that niche, but we're just kind of talking about sort of high level, what does epic fantasy look like? So let's start by looking at the most common tropes. So I tend to break these up by major tropes and common tropes. The major ones are the ones you'll find in almost every epic fantasy. And the common ones are more just like sprinkles on top that you can use them. You'll find them in a lot of epic fantasies, but they're not necessarily required. And the first one here under major tropes is the found family. The protagonist is often cut off from their biological kin and must forge unbreakable bonds with a group of strangers who become their true family. This is very common. We got what is probably my favorite trope in the entire world, the reluctant hero. This is a protagonist who wants nothing to do with saving the world, but is forced into action by circumstances or a moral obligation they can't ignore. I love when the reluctant hero finally just becomes less reluctant and actually embraces their role. It's like my favorite moment in so many fantasy books. It's awesome. There's often a hard magic system. The magic in this world isn't just mysterious sparkles. It has strict rules, costs, limitations that the character must learn to navigate strategically. Now, I will say with this one, this is the way it is now. This isn't always the case historically, but I am running these analysis based on what is working today, not on what has worked historically, because I'm more interested in knowing like what's going on in the industry at this exact moment. Then there's either an evil empire or an ancient evil unleashed. The primary threat is massive and overwhelming, usually taking the form of a tyrannical government or dormant dark force that has returned to destroy everything. There's a mentor figure. You all know what that is. And the quest/journey. And I actually think a quest epic fantasy is kind of a subgenre these days, and it's actually a little bit less common in modern times. Because it's just been done so much in the past. So this is your typical Lord of the Rings, Sword of Shannara, Dragonlance type stuff. But there is still going to be some kind of journey that the character has to go on, both externally and internally. And then as far as common tropes go, we got the traveling troupe. A character finds safety or purpose by hiding within a group of wandering performers. Magic from the mundane. The author takes a seemingly normal skill like cooking or blacksmithing and elevates it to magical status. There's often a masquerade where characters must wear disguises or adopt false personas to infiltrate enemy territory. There's often a vengeance quest. Yes, you definitely see this a lot where your main character, something usually happened to their family or someone important, and they're trying to avenge that issue. The chosen one is a very common one, or a hidden heritage, where the character has a heritage that is beyond the scope of what they thought it was. There's often foreshadowing and a Chekhov's gun, which is where significant objects or skills are introduced early in the narrative, seemingly unimportant at the time, only to become the key to victory in the climax. I would go so far as to say this is not so much a trope as it is a required part of structure for any genre. Then we have the fallen city. So you might find the ruins of a once great civilization. There might be an arranged marriage involved somewhere. There might be a hidden prince. A royal heir is living in obscurity. You might see a theme of like the religious zealot versus crisis of faith, a clash between those who follow strict religious dogma and those who are beginning to question the validity of their gods or leaders. Again, this is epic fantasy, so these are all like made up religions, right? We have the shadow or the tyrant, a physical embodiment of the antagonist, a figure who seeks total control and stands in direct opposition to freedom. The power of truth versus the safety of silence, so characters must decide whether to speak out against injustice and risk death or stay silent to survive a little longer. There might be a secession crisis. There might be a redemption arc, another of my favorite things, favorite tropes. There might be an evil wizard or witch. Going along with the magic system, it's often categorized as forces of nature, fire, water, earth, or air, that sort of thing. There's often a propaganda state. A secretly badass housewife. Love this one. A character who appears domestic or submissive is revealed to have a lethal set of skills or past life as a warrior. This is related to another of my favorite tropes of all time, which is the wise fool, where you have a person who's typically very just like he's a fool. He's doing a lot of really weird, foolish things, and no one takes him seriously or her. And then at some key point, you find out that they're much more involved and skilled than you gave them credit for, and the whole fool thing was kind of just a facade. Love that trope. Then you get the stoic emotionless figure. A character buries their emotion to get the job done, acting as a rock for the group until the pressure finally causes them to crack. All right, so those are all of them. I do have deeper breakdowns of all of these. And if you want to get your hands on this guide, by the way, this is actually a small booklet that I'd publish on Amazon for $5, but I actually don't recommend you get those on Amazon. I recommend you go to my membership where you can get all of them at no extra cost. They're all there. And then we've also just integrated these into my new tool, Story Hacker OS, which allows you to essentially use AI to help you in the process of writing a book in any of these genres. AI works so much better when you give it structure like this. So this is exactly the kind of thing. And as far as I know, no other AI software out there has gone through the trouble of actually creating guides like this to actually give people something more useful than just generic plot templates that don't apply to like 75% of all genres. So there's a link down below if you're interested. But anyway, let's move on to my favorite of the process, which is the plot template. This is where I've gone and kind of looked at a scene by scene breakdown of all of the books, all of the major bestsellers that I'm analyzing, and sort of kit bash them together into a template. So we start with chapter 1, The Ancient Wound, often with a prologue set in a distant past or a mythological realm where a catastrophic event, betrayal, or magical breaking occurs that will shape the entire narrative. Yeah, you definitely see this all the time. And it's called chapter 1 here, but you could easily make this a prologue. It's probably most commonly a prologue, actually. And that just kind of sets up the world, often doesn't involve the protagonist directly, it just sort of gets things going. Then chapter 2 is The Hidden Talent. Introduce the primary protagonist in their constrained normal world, performing daily duties that highlight their lower social status or marginalization. Reveal what the protagonist possesses, a hidden ability, secret heritage, or forbidden skill that they must conceal from authorities under threat of punishment. Then there's the political animal. Shift to a second POV, and that's another thing about this guide is we often have more than one POV here. And this actually makes fantasy really, especially epic fantasy, really difficult to target with an analysis like this, is because introducing multiple POVs actually makes the structure a little bit harder to track. But I've done my best here, so hopefully it works out. So we shift to a second POV, a politically positioned character like a noble, diplomat, exile, or court attendant, navigating an arena of intrigue in a distant city or court. Through their eyes, introduce the wider geopolitical situation, including hints of foreign threats, religious tensions, and corrupt leadership. Chapter 4 is The Veteran's Burden. Introduce a third POV, the veteran or mentor figure or antagonist-aligned character whose perspective frames the larger conflict. Show them in a position of responsibility, perhaps a retired warrior tending a homestead, a scholar guarding forbidden knowledge, or a zealot arriving with a hidden agenda. So that's kind of stuff we get there. Chapter 5 is The Impossible Demand. So we return to the primary protagonist who is given an impossible task, an accelerated deadline, or a forced assignment by an authority figure. And in chapter 6, Catastrophe strikes. So this is your inciting incident. A sudden devastating event shatters the protagonist's world, a massacre at the school or village or temple, a sudden curse, a betrayal, etc. There are all kinds of different things that could happen, but it's a disaster of some kind. And the political web tightens. Cut to the political POV who is dealing with the fallout from the catastrophe, either witnessing it from a different angle or hearing the official sanitized version through propaganda channels. We get the reluctant mentor. The protagonist encounters their mentor figure, either someone known to them who reveals hidden depths or a stranger who intervenes at a critical moment. The mentor confirms that the protagonist's hidden abilities are real and significant and that the catastrophe was not random but targeted. Then we get the refusal and the flight. So the protagonist doesn't like what he's seeing and he just decides to run away from it, dig his head in the sand, all of that. And then that leads to the first test of survival. The fugitives navigate hostile terrain, a border town, a smuggler's route, a bandit-infested road, or a magically dangerous wilderness. They encounter their first lethal challenge, which could be any number of things. and the protagonist is forced to use their hidden ability for the first time in earnest, with messy and dangerous results. That leads to the antagonist's move. So shift to the antagonist POV or the political POV observing the antagonist as they consolidate power following the catastrophe. The antagonist reveals their broader strategy, uniting factions through manufactured fear, manipulating religious authority, or seducing ambitious nobles into a coup. So that's where we get that. From there we go to Sanctuary Among Strangers, where the fugitives find temporary refuge, and they reach the point of no return, which means like essentially at this stage, they cannot just go back to the way their ordinary world was. It is just what it is. Then we have chapter 14, the political maneuver. So we return to the political POV who has now infiltrated a key court, council, or social circle. That's important. We have the road of trials. The traveling group moves through varied terrain, each location revealing a new facet of the world. We have the training begins. So during an extended stop at a safe house, ruin, or hidden settlement, the mentor begins formal training of the protagonist. And there we get a hidden history. So we some kind of truth is revealed involving the past, things that the protagonist might not have been aware of or had been lied to his whole life. And there's a romantic subplot that stirs. So the protagonist shares a quiet moment with a love interest, which could be a fellow traveler, an ally encountered along the way, or a longtime companion seen in a new light. Through conversation, shared grief, or a small intimate gesture, an emotional connection deepens beyond friendship. This is the spark of that. And then we get to the first pinch point, which is a major beat where an elite enemy force, which could be assassins, supernatural pursuers, or a specialized strike team, locates the protagonist group and attacks. The combat reveals the true scope of the antagonist's resources with weapons or abilities far beyond what the heroes can match. And then we deal with the aftermath of that. And moving back to the political POV, there's an investigation that deepens there, and we get the Sanctuary of Knowledge, where the group arrives at a hidden library, a magical wellspring, or ancient site that holds keys to understanding the magic system. And from there, a convergence approaches. So the traveling group nears a major destination like a capital city, a contested fortress, or a sacred site, where they will encounter the political POV storyline, and disguises are donned, false identities crafted, and contingency plans laid. So anyway, this is there are actually quite a few chapters in epic fantasy, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but you kind of get the idea of how this is all set up. And once again, you can easily get this guide on Amazon if you want, or via my membership. But you can kind of see just like the progression of the beginning of the story and how that all works. It actually, epic fantasy tends to meet a lot of the standard beats for all fiction, really. But you can definitely see a lot of the hero's journey elements in here and all of that. Moving on to the standard epic fantasy characters. These are the character types that you're most likely to see. So we have the reluctant savior, of course. This character begins the story in a state of low status, exile, or hiding, often viewing themselves as powerless, broken, or merely a survivor trying to protect a sibling or loved one. We also have the reactivated warrior, or the retired badass, another favorite trope of mine that you often see having to join the fight. And there's a highborn strategist. This is often the masked royal, someone who seems to know a lot more than they're giving on. The doubting zealot. This is an ideological antagonist. And the broken mentor, which could also be the same as that reactivated warrior. And those are the common ones. You'll also tend to find like a love interest and some other things, but these are like the core ones that you see in almost every epic fantasy. And then of course, world building for epic fantasy is going to be a really big one. So we start at a high level with a central mystery or a great lie that has been told to this character their whole life. There's usually some kind of cataclysmic status quo. So something happened in the past that like ruined a whole lot of things, and people are just kind of coming out of that. There's usually hard magic mechanics, a physical and moral cost to using magic. There's often a connection to geography or bloodline in that magic system. As far as settings and locations go, there's a bastion city, so a great urban location that serves as a microcosm of the world's social hierarchy. And you'll also often see the environmental hazard or barrier, so incorporate a massive, dangerous geographical feature that dictates travel, trade, or military strategy, such as a supernatural storm front, a cursed wasteland, or an impassable mountain range guarded by monsters. And from here we get the theocratic or militaristic empire. As far as population and politics goes, there's a oppressed magical caste, often. And there's the training institution or a war band. So this is a specific organization or location dedicated to honing the skills of the world's warriors or mages. As far as history and lore goes, there's usually something like a resurrection of an ancient evil or sentient artifacts or companions. And there's often a schism of faith under religion and beliefs between people who are of a more conservative, older religious faith and people who are rejecting that. And so on. Common themes that you'll see in epic fantasy is the buried truth versus the convenient lie, or blood versus bond. That goes along with the found family trope, or fate versus free will. You'll definitely see this one a lot. I also have some notes on writing prose here, as well as a guide to actually write a book description in this genre. If you have written one and you want to publish something in that genre, I have a guide for that as well. So hopefully this has been a useful exercise for you to go through this. And I guess I'll see you in the next video where we cover another genre just like this one. Cheers.